I thought this was going to be a gay guy giving me a tutorial on shade. It's not what we're doing here. It's not what we're doing here. Blanthony Blantano, the internet's boringest, dumbest music nerd reviewman with the best teeth in the fucking game. And it's time for a review of the new Kvelertak record, Nattesferd. This is the third full-length album from one of the most interesting and exciting metal bands out of Norway right now. And they are known for their creative fusions of black metal, some thrash metal, some hardcore punk, a little bit of hard rock and roll, some classic rock vibes coming out of some of the guitar riffs, with a splash of black metal too coming through on the very harsh, occasionally retched vocals, the blast beat drumming. Their debut record that came out in 2010, which was produced by Kurt Ballou of Converge fame. Amazing debut album. Rarely are debut records this good. And the follow-up record they dropped a few years later was really more of the same. It was actually another review on the internet that had pointed out to me that the translation of the title of this record literally means more, which was fine. The band had a pretty original and distinct sound, and I think with this record they proved that it wasn't just some novelty, that there was more than one album to this sound, to the band. There was a slight change of pace though on this record. It seemed like the group was getting a little more melodic, a little sweeter, and Kvelertak on this latest record over here continues to sweeten the deal with even more melody, more dynamics, less overtly punishing and aggressive music. They're packing even more hard rock and classic rock riffs and anthemic guitar leads into their tracks, to the point where the band no longer feels like a metal band toying with a little bit of classic rock. They feel more like this revivalist hard rock group with a really heavy sound and screamed vocals. Which isn't necessarily a bad thing on paper, it just kind of makes the band's last record seem so much like a transitional moment. In theory, I'm totally for the band kind of flipping the balance of influences in their music, because it could mean just another very refreshing record from Kvelertak. And while on their previous records I think they pulled off rage and aggression really well, not only were these first two records visceral and exciting, but they were also really catchy. But now I'm not so sure if trying to go more accessible was really the way to go here. This album isn't just more, this album is kind of like more Part 2, because there are plenty of cuts on this thing, and there are just 9, plenty of cuts on this thing that feel like they could have fit pretty snugly into the last album, like the title track with its driving, pumping guitar riffs and melodic guitar leads that feel like, when I'm listening to them, in my mind I get the image of a rogue motorcycle gang riding through the desert on a long stretch of abandoned highway. We also have the speedy, hard-hitting, and kind of Motorhead-influenced riffs of the song Bronze Good. And these cuts are okay, it just doesn't seem like the band is taking all that many risks with some of the better songs on here. The better songs are just kind of what you've come to expect from Kvelertak. Then there are other cuts where there's a real instrumental change of pace for the band, where we're getting these hard rock, these vintage, almost classic rock riffs. They're layered with these melodic guitar leads. Sometimes they're harmonized. They don't sound too bad, but it's what the band does with them that I think doesn't really work. And that's just lay them with the typically screamed vocals of the previous two albums, which I enjoyed very much within the context of the black metal and thrash metal and heavy metal and hardcore punk sounds of those records. But just kind of throwing these throat-shredding screams on top of these very mid-paced, swaggered hard rock riffs just doesn't read all that well to me, even though they do have a very metal, a very heavy and hard metal tone to them. I think I would just much rather have a clean vocal over some of these cuts. It's cool that the band is getting more dynamic instrumentally, but I just think the vocals don't reflect the change of pace that the band is making compositionally. The song 1985 I think, is a prime example, one of my least favorite tracks on the record. Then the track Svart Mess, which has this Stevie Nicks-esque intro with these tension-building guitars, just ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a-ding-a, and then over that, the rockinest lead guitars that you've ever heard. Whip out that fucking lighter.
One-winged dove sings song, sound like she's singing, baby, woo.
Some of the changes on this record, I think, have resulted in a couple decent tracks. The opening cut is great. Not only is it enraging like a lot of the band's previous material, but you could tell that they're trying to layer more harmonies and more melodic guitars into the mix. So not only is the track hard-hitting, not only is it throttling, but it's really rich and grand. And that black metal influence continues too, with the blast beats hanging in the background. And on the song Berserker 2, the hard rock, the punk, the black metal influences all seem to coexist really nicely too. And then there's the longest cut on the album, HEKSEBRANN, which is this 9-minute epic, pretty ambitious for Kvelertak. And it's got a nice tension-building intro. I mean, there's not really much more to the track that left a big impression on me past that. But I will say that this album is one of several moments on the record where it feels like there's a good amount of cleanly sung background vocals to kind of balance out the harshness of the very prominent lead vocals throughout much of the record. And that's something that I wish happened a little more, if at least I wasn't going to get any clean lead vocals. I don't think this is the worst thing that Kvelertak could have put out, but this is just not at the level of not only quality and songwriting and excitement, but also, I guess, cutting-edge ideas that I have expected from the band up until this point. Some tracks make me feel like they've painted themselves into a corner and merely feel like lesser cuts from previous records, while others, I think, point to a direction that I'm not really enjoying with the band, where they're primarily just dishing out all of these hard rock riffs and cliches, and they're just delivering some very aggressive and abrasive vocals on top of them, which to me isn't really that refreshing or interesting of a combination. I'm feeling a light to decent 6 on this record. Tran?